apparently most of us are here. So we have a quorum. Now, the question is, do you want to be introduced to the staff in front of us? I had to give you the opportunity. If y'all can live without it and then without introduction of yourselves, then we will proceed. First one up is Senator Deeds.
Another funeral bill you're going to send to education and health. And if you're going to do that, I would, this bill could go there too.
Much to the chagrin of Senator Newman, I will agree to that. Is there a motion? Second. Probably moved and second that bill be re-referred to Health and Education and Health. Yes. If you want to get picky and put the date. All right. Yeah, let's go ahead and record that vote. Okay. That is re-referred to Education and Health. All right, Senator Lucas.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Okay, Senate Bill 1291.
I'm sorry, give me the number again, please.
Yes, Senate Bill 1291.
1291, okay.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bill would remove the Lee Jackson Day and instead make Election Day a holiday. This legislation is revenue neutral. The Virginia experienced barriers to getting to the polls on Election Day. There are usually longer lines at the polls in the early mornings or before the polls close. This trend can largely be attributed to the fact that voters go to the polls before and after work. There have been cases that voters having to leave the polls before casting their votes simply because they had to return to work. Making Election Day a state holiday will make it easier for Virginians to vote. This legislation will help protect and expand the right to vote. This legislation may also help electoral boards recruit officers of elections to serve. Election Day was formerly a state holiday until 1989. And with that, Mr. President, that is the genesis of this bill.
All right, Senator Lucas, thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in support of the bill?
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Asif Bhavnagar. I'm the Assistant Secretary of Administration, and the administration supports this bill. Thank you.
Any further support? Anyone in opposition to Senate Bill 1291? Nobody cares. I think it's interesting. There are various holidays that the Commonwealth recognizes. Why did you choose that particular one?
Because it also expands the opportunity for voters to get to the polls, and I think that's significant.
Well, why not another holiday?
Well, that seemed to be the better one for me.
People who are used to getting 4-day holidays that particular weekend with Lee Jackson on Friday and King on Monday, don't you think they would be a little upset?
Well, I'm sure they would, but Mr. President, I'm not saying President, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I've been, never mind. No, Mr. Chairman, but I think this goes a long way toward helping to expand the number of voters to cast their ballot, and that's more significant to me than to have a long weekend, whether it's on the Friday end or on the Monday end.
Okay, thank you. Anyone on the committee wish to weigh in? Senator Adams. Senator Adams.
To point out a few things. One is that Lee Jackson Day is not a day that the general public gets off. I think that state employees, it's a state holiday. And I've heard from constituents who've gone to the DMV and taken special time to go to the DMV on Lee Jackson Day, that they got there and it was closed and they didn't realize that it was going to be closed for Lee Jackson Day. So I would say that's in terms of the holidays to consider, it's difficult because the other ones are mostly federal holidays, and people know that there's no mail and that sort of thing. Lee Jackson Day, I don't think is as widely publicized in the private sector, doesn't give its employees off. And I think also one fact the committee may not know is that though registered sex offenders are not allowed on school property, they're allowed on school property on election day to vote. And those same sex, a lot of those school districts are not closed. And I think it's in not just to get good voting, but I think it's in the interest of public safety for the children to, and also for parking for school buses. We've heard a lot of schools where they have most of the parking is for teachers. And then if you have a lot of voters coming in, especially all during the rush hours, if school is in session, it can be difficult as well. So for that reason, I'm going to support the bill.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Senator Flagg.
I guess I'm just, I have unease about the movement towards erasing history. And this is a little recognition of history. I don't like everybody who's been recognized in history. You don't. Probably everyone could say that about somebody, but but at the same time, it's sort of the accumulation of events and culture and so forth that have made us what we are today. And so I just get very uneasy about erasing and saying, well, this particular group will erase them, or maybe next time, some years it'd be Martin Luther King, and I would be opposed to erasing something in his honor. I just, for that reason, I think it's never hurt anybody before. And I think we ought to just leave it as it is.
Any further comments? Are you ready to vote? All in favor, vote aye.
Move to report.
I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry about that.
Ayes 5, no 7.
Okay, that bill is defeated.
As expected, but I'll see you again next year.
Thank you. Next, we have Senator Sproul. Okay, all right. Senator Marsden. All right, Senator Locke. Oh, I know you're here. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Senate Bill 1128, and I have some amendments.
All right. Your attention to Senate Bill 1128. Is Amigo going to report the amendments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are two amendments. The first one is at line 44. You would insert 3 additional cemeteries and graves. It's Good Samaritan 37, Pleasant Shade Cemetery 29, Queen Street Cemetery 14. The second amendment is at line 45. You would insert Union Street Cemetery 125.
Senator Locke moves those amendments. Is there a second? All right. All in favor of adopting those amendments, please say aye. Okay. Senator Locke, as you know, in the past, we've always, all this cemetery ones, we've passed the finance to deal with them.
Okay, sure.
So that will be the outcome. They've requested this.
Okay.
Enlighten me, when we went from particular graves to cemeteries, did we put any parameters around the cemeteries?
There's specific numbers of grave sites in the cemetery.
Total number, or is there a limited number per cemetery?
I'll explain.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. That's what I want you to do.
Okay. This is a bill to add the historic African-American cemeteries in the city of Hampton to the list of sites eligible for restoration funding through the Department of Historical Resources. The amendment that you've just heard will complete the list because it took us some time to research and verify the proper grave sites. Last year, Governor Northam visited Tucker Family Cemetery to witness for himself the state of disrepair that many of these historic cemeteries were in. Anthony and Isabella are stated to have been on the ship that arrived in 1619. And they had a son, William, who was born 5 years later. And the Tucker family actually say that they are identified their lineage back to William Tucker. And that cemetery is in their family. And so in order to preserve these grave sites, especially in the year that we celebrate the 400th anniversary of the first Africans being brought to our shores and sold into slavery, the city of Hampton would like to add these cemeteries to the list. And we've named those. Bassett Cemetery has 212 graves. Elmonton Cemetery has 339. Queen Street has 14. Pleasant Shade, 29. The Tucker Family Cemetery has 15. Union Street, 125. Good Samaritan has 37. In order to be eligible to receive the $5 per grave per year, the deceased must be an African American and must have lived in the 19th century between 1800 and 1900. So even though there may be more grave sites in the actual cemetery, they must have been between that time period.
Thank you.
Okay. And I have put in a budget amendment.
Okay. Is there anyone wish to speak in opposition to this bill? Does anyone that wish to add to Senator Locke's great presentation? Hearing none, is there a motion? And re-refer.
Second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. Record your votes.
Ayes 14, no 0.
That bill is reported. Thank you.
Thank you.
Going back up to Senator Lucas. I'm sorry, Sproul, excuse me. Why don't y'all strike off the one we did?
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. I thought I had hit the lotto something late. Please apologize. Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 1060. Disclosure of a lottery runner, name, and other personal information. Allow a lottery runner to submit in writing to Virginia Lottery.
Senator Sproul, can I
Yes, sir.
interrupt you for just a moment? There's
Yes,
a
sir.
very similar bill to that, number 1082. Would you object to rolling 1082 into your bill and listing both of us as co-sponsors?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is properly moved and seconded to roll 1082 into 1060. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay. Now,
Thank you.
they want that as a recorded vote. So, okay. Now,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And what it states, Mr. Chairman, in the short form is that when a person hit the lottery and that he will submit in writing to the Virginia Lottery that he or she does not wish to have the information disclosed. So it's up to the person. That right now, that if a person hits a big lottery, they have to disclose everything, who it is and what have you. In some states, they have it so that they do not want everybody to know that. Take, for example, in my case, Mr. Chairman, I don't want nobody to know. I got 16 brothers and sisters. I got 72 nieces and nephews.
Senator Sproul, have you announced yet in South Carolina that you won that $1.6 billion?
No, sir. So that's all it does, Mr. Chairman, is that in writing, you have to give it to the lottery board that you submit that you wish not to have your name submitted.
Okay. Simple enough. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to that bill? Welcome.
How you doing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Megan Ryan with the Coalition for Open Government. And I would congratulate Senator Spruill if he did win the lottery, but in some ways, it made the point that one of the things that we need in the lottery system is some oversight to make sure that people who don't also have power to influence the lottery are not also winning the lottery. We have this is a government-run program, and it has to be generally accountable to the public in the same way that all government programs have to be. And it's also a government program that is specifically built on the trust of the public to make sure that the games are being run fairly and without manipulation. I would just point out that reporters in Iowa, Wisconsin, and Florida used lottery data, which included the names of lottery winners, to uncover collusion between lottery officials and straw buyers, winners with close ties to retail stores that sold the tickets, and people who owed back taxes and back child support, essentially using lottery tickets and winners to launder money through the system. So both the long time and the newly wealthy can become targets of scammers and those who seek to physically harm them. But existing laws should be enforced against those lowlifes rather than cutting off an important avenue to the public's oversight of the lottery program. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else wish to speak in opposition?
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Amy Perrin-Seibert on behalf of the Virginia Press Association. And I won't belabor the points that Megan brought up because I think we have very similar feelings. We actually appreciate that Senator Spruill's bill keeps the process as transparent as possible, but people have the option to opt out. We think that's the right way to go. But we really would prefer it to be even more narrow if possible, to maybe limit it to really high earnings. I think for the same reasons that Megan said, it's important that people see that real people are winning the lottery. And I think for the integrity of the process, we would appreciate that as an option. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in opposition? Anyone else in support? Any questions from the panel? Senator Evans.
I think it's probably more of a statement because I already know the answer for Megan. I think it's from Open Government Coalition. She mentioned child support and back taxes and that sort of thing. And I don't think we have any other oversight of other gambling activities. I mean, if you win at a casino in some other state, do they publish the names and let people look through them in order to collect taxes? I mean, I think the pros benefit the cons. When I was planning on winning my $1.6 billion this summer, and I have the ticket stubs to prove it, there was an article in the paper that struck me about past winners, mostly in other states, and some of the things that had happened to them. There had been actually people, besides the scams, someone was actually murdered by someone who wanted more of the money. And there's a whole process of what you're supposed to do besides unlisting your phone number. It's a lot more involved. And if you're a big winner, I'd be very concerned for someone's financial future and their safety.
Thank you. I think since you raised the issue about the reporting, the lottery folks have a responsibility to the state to collect the information as to whether someone is delinquent on their taxes or child support. So that's still under the realm of the law.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. All I'm interested in that these things that the young lady talk about, I agree. You got to abide by the law. My concern is that once I win it, that they know about it, that in writing, I prefer my name not to be mentioned. I still got to abide, whatever the law says, whatever she says, I abide by the law. But just don't let my name be mentioned to my family.
Okay. Why would you want your family to know, Senator? It might be best that nobody knows.
I agree.
Any other? Senator Black.
Move to report, Mr. Chairman, for the sake of Spruill's family.
Isn't it the case that often these people who go up and say, hey, I just got $1 billion, suddenly get 1 billion friends, and those friends are often trying to get a piece of the pie, and it causes a whole lot of problems, doesn't it?
Yes, sir, it does.
So, it seems like a positive measure.
Senator Zarble.
Just speaking to the motion really quick. I spend at least a few times a year telling some of my clients that even though I can sue, or even though I've gotten a judgment for them, it's impossible to collect it because the person they're suing doesn't have any money. And I can't tell you how many judgment deadbeats I've had to chase around who either don't pay or never pay or are very unlikely to pay. And as soon as you take away an ability for somebody to find out that somebody might have come into money so they can finally pay a debt they're owed, that concerns me. And also, by the way, all child support does not go through the Department of Child Support Enforcement. There's a lot of child support that's collected outside that system and by people that where these kinds of checks are not regularly done, and having that information available, I think, might help to get some things paid. I appreciate the concerns raised about privacy and all these bad people trying to come after these folks, and that concerns me. I just don't know if that's a reason to throw the whole thing out. The transparency concerns really are important to me, so that's kind of where I am.
All right. Anyone else wishes to opine? All right.
Mr. Chairman, just briefly, thank you. Appreciate the comments from the Virginia Coalition for Open Government, but and she spoke quickly, which I hope every witness does. But one thing she didn't mention was with those what those reporters found was the fraud was how many times some of those folks were winning. It was amazing how many times they had kept winning at the exact same stores where they happened to have a friend who worked there or who owned the place. And that was the real hook of those stories. And I think that we would be putting Virginia in a place where we'd be inviting more opportunities for fraud here into the Commonwealth. So I share a lot of Senator Serval's concerns as well, which pains me because I enjoy the patrons legislations almost every time.
Is there a motion? Properly moved and second, the bill be reported. Record your votes.
Ayes 10, noes 4.
The bill is reported.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right. Senator Morrison did not show up. Senator McClellan, I don't show you on here, but I see you.
She's low on there.
Oh, she's low. All right. With any other patrons that are not on the committee, Favola, Eben. Well, I'm coming down the list. They're saying I should be polite to everyone here. Cosgrove. Well, eventually we'll need him, but not right now. If you want to get him. All right. So, who was first? You or John? Or y'all want to have a fight about it?
I have two bills. I have Senate Bill 1062 and 1109. Do you have a preference which one I do first?
I'm sorry. No, whichever one you want to do.
All right.
What's the first one?
So start with Senate Bill 1109. This one, I believe Senator Eben has a version of as well. This would add discrimination on the basis of an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity as an unlawful housing practice, and defines those terms. And there are not, a couple of people here to speak, but there have been many studies that show that LGBTQ couples and individuals across Virginia are being denied opportunities to purchase or rent a house. And there have been a couple of different studies, at least, to show this. The Kaiser Family Foundation reported that, and what they do is they'll take the same letter, and this is similar to studies that have been done to prove racial discrimination. They will take the same letter but change who the letter is from. So in one letter, it will be from Johnny and Susie King. The other letter will be from Susie and Sarah King. And exact same letter, everything else about the couple is the same, but the responses they get are often different. So the Kaiser Family Foundation reported that 11% of LGBT respondents to a study had experienced housing discrimination. HUD's online rental study reveals that heterosexual couples were favored almost 16% more often than both lesbian and gay couples. 19% of the National Center for Transgender Equality and the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force sample of transgender respondents show that they have been or are homeless and faced eviction. 11% faced eviction, 26% were forced to seek temporary shelter because they had trouble finding housing. Home here in Virginia did a match pair test of 51 match pair email tests over the course of 2014 and 15. 44% of those tests showed worse treatment of same-sex couples than opposite-sex couples. And so there is a problem with discrimination against individuals on the basis of housing, on the basis of sexual identity, or gender identity or sexual orientation. As someone who 60 years ago could have been discriminated against in purchasing the home that I live in the Fan, which is a 90% white neighborhood, and yet I was able to purchase a house and purchase that house with a white husband who 60 years ago we would not have been able to purchase that house. I believe that discrimination on any basis, just because of who you are or who you love, is wrong. And it is time that Virginia's laws are updated to get rid of it. And with that, I've got a couple of folks who probably want to speak, and Senator Evan probably would want to speak to his bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Wait, just,
from an administrative standpoint, can we roll the two bills together?
it's up to-
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say was to roll it in together, and I support everything she said. So
What is your bill number?
that's 12.
998 and 1109.
I thought this is 1230. Mine is 1232. To roll
I'm sorry,
1232
you're correct.
to 1109.
Yeah.
All right, the motion is to roll those two bills together. And the motion properly seconded. And you say we have to have a roll call? Okay, so record your votes. Okay. All right. Now that they're together, you wouldn't be co-patron of that?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Co-chief patron, all right.
Just the only thing I wanted to say otherwise is that I wanted to remind the committee that this is a bill that former Senator Wexton had carried for a number of years that we had passed overwhelmingly through committee before. So I hope the committee will be disposed to see it similarly.
Okay, thank you. You said you had other witnesses, or do you want to?
I think when you ask for support, they'll probably just stand and say support. I don't know that they have specific
All right.
testimony.
Well, let's see if there's any opposition first. There was some proposed compromise language floating around. Was there any consideration of that?
Mr. Chairman, yes, Felicia Preisner with the Virginia Catholic Conference, we did approach the patrons with some compromise language. And Senator McClellan indicated she's going to be sending it to the people who brought her the bill. So, okay.
So we don't have a conclusion on that yet?
We do have a conclusion, and we oppose the proposed amendment. I don't know if you want her to explain it, and then I can tell you why.
Okay, that'd be fine.
Okay. I do have copies if you want me to hand those out. It's up to you, but I can also just give you a little background as to our position on this. We believe that the path forward should not be an all or nothing proposition, but rather one that takes all perspectives into consideration. We hope to find a solution that demonstrates compassion toward all people and ensures faithful service of the most vulnerable in the Commonwealth. In our service, in our ministries in the Catholic Church, we serve refugee resettlement programs, homeless shelters, transitional housing, and all types of programs that maintain the dignity of all people. And it accounts in our underlying religious principles on which they are founded. The religious preference language that's currently in the bill before you would not protect these programs. Our ministries do not limit the provision of housing and services to Catholics only, nor would we ever dream of doing so. We seek to be a promise of hope to all people in the community with the goal of serving the less fortunate and most vulnerable among us. And that's why we've been asking that the senator and others help us in this mission and moving forward with our faith and our faithful service to these people. The language itself is one sentence, and it would be inserted in both, well, now that they've been put together, at line 123 on the current bill, and the language reads, in the sale, rental, or occupancy of dwellings or use of facilities that an owner operates, nothing in this chapter shall prohibit a religious organization, association, or society, or any educational institution, nonprofit institution, or organization operated, supervised, or controlled by or in conjunction with a religious organization, association, or society from taking or refraining from taking any action that is calculated to promote or adhere to its bona fide religious principles. And like I said, I do have copies in my folder here if anybody would like one of that language.
Okay. And this is the language that comes from the New Jersey?
It's very similar to New Jersey's language, correct? And there are many other states that have accounted for people's ministries' fates when dealing with this type of legislation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Senator?
Sorry, that's yours.
Sorry. Thank you. I am not agreeable to that language. First, there already is, I think, a religious exemption that should cover, and she took the, someone took my, oh, here it is.
While she's looking for that, to give her a moment, Migo, can you help us in here?
Mr. Chairman, I think that what the senator is referring to begins at on page 2.
Yes.
With subsection C, line 118.
Yes, where it says, nothing in this chapter shall prohibit a religious organization, association, or society, or any nonprofit institution or organization operated, supervised, or controlled by, or in conjunction with a religious organization, association, or society from limiting the sale, rental, or occupancy of dwellings that it owns or operates for other than commercial purposes to persons of the same religion, or from giving preferences to such persons unless membership in such religion is restricted on account of, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe that covers any religious objection sufficiently. Part of my concern with the amendment that at least was proposed to me, I think would weaken our current law, particularly with respect to the other groups already included, race, and the other protected classes. And so I can't support a weakening of current law. And I think it also sort of goes in the opposite of direction. What we're trying to do is expand protections against discrimination in housing, and not add to more discrimination. And I think their amendment will gut the bill.
Did a member wish to offer that amendment? Hearing none, then that is off the table.
So moved.
Wait a minute. What, Senator Black, what
I move the amendment that was suggested by the Catholic Conference.
Okay. Did you second that?
But before I make a comment, can I ask you a question, amigo? Do you think, could you just elaborate a little bit on that? Do you believe that the language that's in the current bill adequately addresses, at least as drafted in your mind, what the issue being raised in terms of the religious concern?
There's a lifeline that's coming this way that may want to help you. There you go.
Because I understand the underlying issue. We've heard this bill every year. We reported out of the committee. If I may, Mr. Chair, just make this comment. I want to make sure that we get this right. I don't want to do anything to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But as I read the current exemption, it basically allows for a religious organization to do that unless the membership in the organization is restricted on account of race. And I think what the senator didn't read was that if the membership is also restricted in terms of sexual orientation and gender identity. And I don't think that the Catholic Church restricts membership on those bases.
Okay. Was there a second to the motion to amend the bill? All right, there is a second. All right. All in favor of?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair. I'd like to speak in
Senator Mark.
opposition to the amendment. I think the point that the senator from Richmond has made is correct in that what this would do is not only affect the issue related to sexual orientation and gender identity, but would also, in effect, open up potential for significant discrimination based upon race, color, national origin, sex, elderliness, familial status, or handicap. And I don't think that that is a direction that we should be taking at this time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Serval.
Just a point of order. I don't know what we're voting on. I don't have a copy of this amendment in front of us. I have something that was verbalized from a podium, but I don't have an actual piece of paper that has words on it, so I'm not really clear what exactly we're voting on.
I believe that she will pass those out to the committee. And while she's doing that, I will ask anyone who is standing up if there's wish to speak for or against this particular amendment.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Josh Hetzler. I'm with the Family Foundation. I know this is a bill that this committee hears every year. You're pretty familiar with it, but I think it's important to take an opportunity to remind everyone why, while I'm sure it's true that we all have different opinions on these two concepts of sexual orientation and gender identity, that nevertheless, whatever you think, this is a poor policy, a poor public policy way to effectuate what I think the patron is trying to get at. And the reason for that is because these two terms, sexual orientation and gender identity, are not concrete terms. They're not, they have a sense of being internal to a person, completely subjective, not readily apparent, not observable. Something that a person, a landlord or someone who's renting out or maybe a dormitory situation, may not know. They may not have any way to know these things. So as a matter of non-discrimination law, we're going to penalize people for something. All of the other things in the category are very much readily identifiable. But these, on the other hand, not only are they not identifiable, but they can be changed from moment to moment. Right, based only upon the claim of the person of the one party. I also want to point out that we're not aware of any situation of a founded complaint in Virginia on these bases. And I think that's very important to note because when there's an absence of a demonstrated problem, on the other hand, what we see in other states that have added these terms to their various codes is immediately there are conflictions with religious liberty. In this case, specifically with religious colleges like Liberty University and Regent with dormitories, the gender identity portion would very much be a problem for sex segregated dormitories, churches with camps or various homeless shelters. This would become a real problem for all of them. And the last thing I will say is this, as the bill currently stands, the exemption that the patron spoke of really takes any exemption away that there would be by adding these two terms in that section. It effectively nullifies anything. So for those reasons, I would encourage you all to vote against it, regardless of what you feel about it.
Let me, I've given you a fair amount of leeway. I ask for those who wish to speak in favor of the amendment or in opposition to the amendment, not the bill.
Oh.
We need to narrow down what we're doing.
I apologize. Well, so we are,
You're supportive of the amendment?
We have no comment on the amendment. We are
Okay.
not supportive of the amendment.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Chip Dix on behalf of the Realtors, and what I would say is that we don't support the amendment, and the reason we don't is that I think the existing language in the law already covers the situation. So let me read some of the language with you, and then let's see if it doesn't read that way. And Tom Payne is here from the Attorney General's office, and he and I conferred, and he agrees with the reading of the language. So when you look at line 118, then it talks about that nothing shall prevent any religious organization or anything else from basically discriminating on, so long as the membership on line 122 in such religion is restricted, blah, 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 based upon these things. So you can already discriminate based upon this religious exception within your faith if you choose to do that, unless the membership is restricted on the account of one of these protected classes. So therefore, the amendment would not be necessary because it's already protected under the existing law.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak to the amendment only? All right, is there a motion on the amendment? Yes, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Kozio. I'm the Director of Research and Policy at Housing Opportunities Management. We do not support the amendment for obvious reasons that have been discussed previously, and further believe that this language would open the door to more discrimination in the housing markets, as well as possibly make our Virginia Fair Housing Law not substantially equivalent to the federal Fair Housing Law, which would have serious consequences for our residents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion on the amendment? All right. The second has been withdrawn. Is there another second? Properly moved and seconded. All in favor of supporting the amendment, record your votes. Vogel. Okay.
Ayes 4, noes 10.
All right, that amendment is not included. All right, now, was there anyone who wished to speak against the bill now? Is anyone feels compelled to speak for the bill now? He got one step up, so we'll let Eric speak.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Eric Johnson, Director of the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. The administration supports this bill. The Fair Housing Law has been very helpful to our programs and across the Commonwealth, and we support these additional changes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there is a motion. Was there a second to pass the bill? Was there a second? Okay, so I'm sorry. All right. I'll record your votes.
Ayes 13, noes 1.
That bill is reported. All right,
Okay,
you said you had a second bill.
I do. This one is Senate Bill 1062, which also deals with housing discrimination. And it does two things. One, it would prohibit a local government from rejecting a proposed affordable housing development on the basis of the demographics of the resident it intends to serve. So it takes all of the existing protections and says a local government cannot approve or deny a project because any one of the protected classes it is intended to serve them or they will live there. But the second thing it does is it adds to the list of reasons that a local government could not deny a proposed development solely on the basis that a certain number of the units to be included in that development are affordable dwelling units. Here's the problem we're trying to solve. As you all are very well aware, Virginia has a affordable housing shortage. And part of the problem that we have faced with local governments that are trying to address that shortage is NIMBYism. and a stereotype in certain communities about what affordable housing is. There was one locality in the area that was looking to, there was a proposal before the Planning Commission to include affordable housing units, and they were really targeting teachers, firefighters, some of our middle class workers who can't afford to live in the communities where they work. And as you know, affordability is defined based on what percentage of your income you are paying for your house. There were a lot of people who showed up at the Planning Commission who, in their mind, the affordability was public housing. And someone actually stood up and said, we do not want Gilpin Court, which is a public housing development here in the city of Richmond. We do not want Gilpin Court coming to our community. And so, unfortunately, a lot of Planning Commission meetings and in a lot of communities, the only people who show up at these at meetings and express their views are folks expressing a NIMBY view, because most of the people who would benefit from affordable housing units are at work. And so this would take away the ability to say we are going to deny this project solely based on the number of units that are affordable. This is a bill I tried a few years ago in the House. At the time, local governments were skeptical. And if I remember correctly, there were more than a few that opposed it. Since then, it is local governments who approached me and said, I think you need to put that bill back in. Over the summer, when two of my affordable housing bills did not pass, I held a stakeholder group throughout the year to try to get at what are some of the barriers to increasing the stock of affordability. And this was an issue that arose. So I think now it's time to put this policy in place.
Okay, thank you. Is anyone here to speak in opposition? Were there any questions? Is anyone here in opposition to the bill? I assume you're standing because you're in support. I believe that the senator has done a good job, but if you wish to continue, you can.
Yes, I'm Rhonda Thisson with the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Virginia, NAMI, Virginia. We support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
All right.
I move to report.
Properly moved and second that Senate Bill 1062 be reported. All in favor say aye. All right.
Ayes 13, noes 1.
Okay, that bill is reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
2 for 2, that's a good day, John.
All right. Senator Marsden. I'm sorry, John, but I got to follow the line here. Speak to our very good staff about the sequence.
I did want to say that one of the bills we have before us here today is on data collection on restrictive housing with the Department of Corrections, and a almost substantially identical bill filed by Senator Favola is being heard in rehabilitation and social services. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, what the best committee to hear this matter in.
Which bill are we referring to?
This would be Senate Bill 1085.
1085, okay. So you would like that one to be re-referred, or was that?
I think it is, let the chairman's, you and Chairman Reeves.
All right, is there a second? All right, the motion is to re-refer Senate Bill 1085 to rehab. Record your votes. Okay. Okay.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 1098, and keep in mind, Mr. Chairman, I've just lightened the committee's load here today, so.
Well, you can lighten it a couple more if you want to.
Well, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 1098 is a one-word bill. Changes the word and, or excuse me, the word or to the word and. what we currently have in Virginia, if you have 250 or fewer employees, excuse me, and gross revenues of $10 million, if either or of those conditions exist, you are a small business. But what that means is you can have a business with 250 employees and let me get fantastical here for a minute, and $2 billion in revenue, you're a small business. And so by putting these two elements together, both the number of employees and the amount of money together to define a small business, I think that is fairer to small business, because we keep having this creep up as to where just about everybody's a small business. And
No, we're only at 94%.
huh?
We're only at 94%.
At 94%. The broad definition doesn't serve the needs of small businesses in Virginia because it creates unfair competition with large business concerns, and legitimate small businesses are handicapped. 75% of Virginia businesses have 25 fewer employees, so why would a business with 250 employees and unlimited revenue need special consideration for state procurement? By simply changing the definition from 250 employees or annual gross revenues of $10 million or less to 250 fewer employees and annual gross revenues of $10 million or less, minus the cost of goods and equipment, we can even the playing field for small businesses who are the driving force of our economy. Now, this was recommended by the Virginia Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity Study conducted by Virginia Commonwealth University. They feel like it's a good idea. There's no negative fiscal impact on the Commonwealth. I think this is good policy. We need to redefine this. And especially in an area, it used to be that small businesses were providing actual goods and services. Now in this IT world, you can have a huge company with just enormous earning potential that ends up being defined as a small business. So that is the bill. It changes the word or to and.
Thank you. Senator Locke.
Senator Marston, we've had these definition bills coming through here over the past few years. Other than changing the word and, I mean, what's the difference between what you're trying to do and what we've been hearing over the past couple of years?
I'm not, overly familiar with what you've been hearing over the past a few years. It's my first venture into this, but this is a very simple approach to the matter. It is not doesn't involve a lot of technical language or redefining certain things, other than that what we're doing here is both elements of what defines a small business are combined in a way that I think is meaningful and will help small businesses in the Commonwealth.
Maybe Mr. Stone
let me be more
okay,
specific.
all right.
There's been some concern on the part of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus that efforts to change the definition of small business will eliminate some of the micro businesses, small women and minority-owned businesses out of this process. Does this do that?
My understanding is that it does not, but we're not dealing with micro businesses here. I believe that is a governor's executive order.
It was.
It was. My understanding is that is still in play. So this would, perhaps be in conflict with that. But this legislature are the folks to make the laws in the Commonwealth, and executive orders are, while sometimes useful, are not as helpful. If we want to take this by and take a closer look at micro businesses, I don't want to impact other good policy, but just in terms of the definition of a small business, this seems to be an improvement.
Senator Locke, to complete your question.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Evans.
Really briefly, I think Senator Locke touched on something. I had a bill similar, but I think this is tiny in that it could hurt some of the larger minority businesses, but I think what this bill does in general is it helps all small businesses owned by people who are minority or not. And if I don't know the stats on businesses that are owned by minorities, if they tend to be the smaller of the businesses or larger, but I think the idea of helping a small business is designed for small, and it doesn't say, correct me if I'm wrong, Senator Marston, it doesn't say that minority-owned businesses are specifically impacted. So a small business, maybe Dave or Mr. Amigo, Mr. Wade could help us, if they would be impacted, minority owned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this would change the definition of small business, and of course, many women-owned and minority-owned businesses are also small businesses. And I think to Senator Locke's comment, I think when this was looked at a few years back by the Joint Committee study on procurement, the percentage was into the 10% range as to which how many businesses this change would affect. So I can't say for sure whether it would really have an adverse effect on minority businesses or women-owned
Chair?
businesses.
Just one final question for Mr. Wade. We have a separate category called minority owned. Is that correct when you have SWAM? And would they still be minority owned is minority owned? That doesn't impact the size of small business. Doesn't mean that minority owned businesses would be disqualified, does it? If it's a SWAM process?
Yes, a minority-owned business could also be classified as a small business.
So it has to be small and minority.
Correct.
Thank you.
Senator Black.
You know, it would seem to me that the general public would probably be taken aback at the idea that we define small businesses to include businesses that have 250 employees and revenues that are up to $10 million a year. Most people would love to have such a small business, but you know, when I look at this and I see what you're getting at, wouldn't your bill be? Wouldn't it in effect take a business, let's say a hedge fund on Wall Street or did business on Wall Street that's got 250 high-powered lawyers and CPAs, and they're bringing in perhaps billions of dollars a year in cash flow. And what your bill would say is, no, you can't do that. If you're going to, you've got to be under both of those limitations in order to be a small business.
That's correct, Senator Black. The 250 person limit on the number of employees is rather high in and of itself, but that's okay. I'm not questioning that. The issue here is that they can have unlimited income because they've met the one of the two criterias. I have 250 employees or less, so therefore I'm a small business. Doesn't matter how much revenue we make. We could make billions and still be a small business. And I don't think that's appropriate. And I think that this is a change to the law that's pretty simple to understand. And it just gives that they have to meet both criteria, not just one.
And Mr. Chairman, so your bill really is designed to focus our attention on genuine small businesses and basically to move it back to what it was intended to be, which was to help the small entrepreneur who's trying to get a start and move forward.
That is correct, sir.
If we could hear from the patron saint of the issue, Mr. Stone, would you please come up?
Right. Mr. Chairman, Senators, thank you very much. My name is Chris Stone. I'm a licensed professional engineer, and I have 3 offices in Virginia. And I have to caveat this by saying that I am not a small business. I would like to change this because it's the right thing to do. The small business definition hasn't been changed since 1986. And I think it's time to update the definition for today's business environment. And essentially what the current definition does is it creates a loophole. And that is you can have up to 250 people and unlimited revenue and be a certified small business basically for life. And all we're trying to do is help the legitimate small businesses. The current definition really penalizes legitimate small businesses, but it also penalizes large businesses as well. I think to address Senator Locke's question, it does not at all impact the status of women, minority, or veteran-owned businesses. They still retain those designations. They still participate in the SWAM program. And I think the Senator also mentioned, but the VCU study that was commissioned by the Department of Small Business Supplier Diversity last year, this was the recommendation, which is to make this one simple word change, primarily because there's no real fiscal impact. And that's what has been a deterrent for all the legislation in years past, is that there has been a significant, I think, fiscal impact. So this is a good thing, I think, for businesses in Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone wish to speak in opposition to the bill? Hearing none. Hearing one, okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Miles Laurie on behalf of the Virginia Transportation Construction Alliance. VDOT works a little bit different, and VDOT has been struggling mightily to make their SWAM goals. If you restrict and you change that one word in terms of VDOT projects, our members are trying to be very involved in those types of projects, our SWAM members. But if you make this change, you're going to probably eliminate about 50% of our members' ability to be SWAM certified small businesses. So that's our concern with the legislation. And again, VDOT works just a little bit different. Thank you.
Miles,
Chairman.
in the bills in the last couple of years, were road construction issues exempt from that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe they were, but in certain areas they have been, but in this particular area, I don't think that amendment was ever offered. And if it was offered, certainly our members would feel much, much differently about it.
Our patron saint may be able to enlighten.
It hasn't been excluded, but the one change that we did make this year in the bill is that the $10 million excludes goods and equipment, which really is the thing that helps, I think, a lot of those VDOT subcontractors that are small businesses, because a lot of them would still be able to stay in the program.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Who?
Mr. Chair.
Somebody down here first.
Oh.
Somebody.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator DeSantis.
Miles, if you could. Mr. Chairman, if we have a VDOT contractor that has 200 employees and you exempt the cost of receipts for gross receipts for cost of goods and equipment, then that VDOT company, chances are there's, all of the cost of goods, all the equipment and everything is exempt. So they're really just have to stay under the 250 and they're fine, the way I read this. So Miles, do you still believe that, or are you still against the bill with that caveat?
Mr. Chairman, Senator DeStef, we think the bill, no doubt, is better than it has been in the past, but we still have concerns about it. But we understand what you're saying. But yes, we still do have concerns about it.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Barker.
Yes, Mr. Luria, before you get too far away, you're not quick enough. So
Let your people go.
you came voluntarily to the podium. So
It's my job, Mr.
yes,
Chairman.
yes.
It's my job.
Reflecting back on what we've been dealing with over the last several years, would it be fair to say that one of the things that has been an issue in the past, and that might be something that would be relevant in this particular situation, is that at the federal level they classify different types of businesses in different ways, and that we have struggled with trying to do that, I believe, here, but we have not been successful thus far. But do we not run the risk of having various classes of types of employers that we would, in effect, be much more onerous in terms of restricting access to opportunities than other types of businesses that where this would not be that difficult to meet?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what I'd suggest to you, I mean, if you tried to exempt out VDOT work, I think that there could be. I think there could be some issues with that. I think it could make it unwieldy, certainly for the department and everything else. The suggestion of making that, of carving that out, we think we like that suggestion, but there could be some issues with that. So, Senator, yes.
Thank you.
If this bill is reported, you will have the same opportunity to argue that point before finance.
Oh,
Is
joy.
anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Is anyone who feels compelled to speak in support? Is there a motion?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that Senate Bill 1098 be reported and be referred to finance. Record your votes.
Ayes 10, noes 3.
Bill is reported. and
Well, there you
referred.
go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
The next bill that I have, and the final bill of the my afternoon here, is Senate Bill 1028, and I believe we have a substitute that Mr. Wade is circulating.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion to adopt the substitute? Properly moved and seconded, we adopt the substitute for Senate Bill 1028. All in favor say aye. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What the substitute does from the original bill is include some technical issues raised by the Virginia Employment Commission. And I've also added a reenactment clause to this because I think there's going to be a period of adjustment if this bill were to pass, that the VEC would need to have time to prepare for this bill. So I think it's appropriate that it be reenacted next year if indeed it is passed today. And this is a local procurement bill for this bill contains a local labor use requirement for certain construction projects in excess of $500,000. It defines the local labor market as every locality in Virginia and every county outside of Virginia if any portion of that county is within 50 miles of the border of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So in other words, if a mile into a county in West Virginia is within 50 miles, then the whole county is exempt. And I do have a map here. It contains a considerable number of counties in our neighboring states. If unable to meet labor needs locally, contractors will inform the commission of the number and types of positions to be filled. If unable to fill the need after 4 days, the VEC shall issue a waiver to the contractor or subcontractor to inform them of the lack of candidates, which will permit the contractor to fill remaining positions from outside of the local labor market. And I believe what that will allow to happen, if you get some very, very technical piece of work, you know, constructing an airport or doing something that requires specific labor, I believe this will allow you to receive such a waiver. Public bodies will submit a copy of any contract that is subject to this bill to the Department of Labor and Industry and the county, city, town, or state the employees reside in, their occupation, and a copy of the waiver granted by the commission. Penalty is $250 per violation. This is a job creator by involving local residents in projects in Virginia. There's no preference for unions or non-union businesses. You know, it is silent in that respect. But other states, Mr. Chairman, are doing it to us. And I think we need to reciprocate and have laws that create equitability between us and our neighbors. And because they are able to come into the Commonwealth and take our employees. And so we need to be able to protect our own employees and that is the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Thank you. When it says the entirety of Virginia is a local labor market, does that mean for a project in Wythe County that Arlington or Virginia Beach are in our local labor market?
Yes. In the plain language of the bill, yes. Obviously, that's an impracticality, but certainly what we want to do is protect Virginia jobs.
And Mr. Chairman, a second question then. So if that's correct, then my reading of this would mean that the wages that have to be paid for the project in Wythe County or in Carroll County has to be the prevailing wage as it exists in Arlington or Virginia Beach?
I do not know that.
Accurate or not?
I don't believe that. Do I have someone here who can speak to that?
Is that the case or not?
Can you help us with this?
That's my last question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see where that applies, but I don't think that's the intent of the bill, but I don't see where that applies, but I can't answer for sure.
Okay. Is there anyone here wish to speak in opposition? Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Scott Schuffelbarger with the Coalition for Procurement Reform. I first would like to say I've been out of the country and would like to express my disappointment in not being able to address our position with the senator prior to now. My organization has reservations, but philosophically with preferences and mandates and practically with the implementation and oversight of this bill. Also, we feel it shifts a significant amount of burden to the contractors in order to validate the subcontractors' workforce. And as such, we appreciate the senator's efforts, but respectfully oppose.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Gordon Dixon with the Associated General Contractors of Virginia. We're in the same position as Scott said just a minute ago. While we understand the intent to hire Virginia first, mandating that contractors have to go through a process where they have to find out where residents actually live in order to hire them before they hire them is a difficult mandate for our members to deal with. Most of our guys are small business owners. They're not large international corporations. They're small guys. They hire locally. It's one of their niche marketing pieces that they hire local more often than not. They try and find those local labor markets when they can. And I guarantee you, if you have any construction workers that are looking for a job, please let me know, because I know a lot of people ready to hire them right now. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Miles Lauria, again, on behalf of the Virginia Transportation Construction Alliance, we share the same concerns that the previous two speakers articulated. One of the real challenges right now for delivering transportation projects is actually getting labor. Some of these projects are highly specialized. Sometimes we do have to go outside the state or outside the region for that talent. We hope that you defeat the bill.
Thank you. Senator DeSalle.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Morrison, I have a quick question for you. So in the original bill, the fine was $100 if you violated this in 75 miles. And I know that for the labor market in Virginia Beach, we go pretty far down into North Carolina to pull people in. What's the catalyst for reducing the 75 miles to 50 miles and then increasing the penalty from $100 to $250?
The folks who presented this bill opportunity to me felt that that was a more realistic approach in terms of the mileage, in terms of the fees. I'm neutral on that and would have been fine keeping it at $100.
Well, Mr. Chairman, with that, I'd like to make a motion that we pass this by indefinitely.
Properly moved and seconded, the bill be passed by indefinitely.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Barker.
Yes, just quickly a comment and a question, basically to the staff, I guess, since probably more knowledgeable on this than the patron. We've had similar bills in the past related to preferences for Virginia residents of in one form or another. If I recall, one of the significant concerns we've had has been that if we initiated this type of legislation, we would get comparable legislation from other states, which would prevent Virginians from being able to get jobs in a neighboring state. Is that in any way still true, do you think? So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I think in previous bills that dealt with giving in-state preferences or preferences for Virginia contractors, what DGS has said is that every state watches what other states doing, and then they will give that same preference to their in-state contractors.
Mr. Chairman, if I might further answer Senator Barker's question, we attempted to look for language that says this would only apply against states who were doing it to us rather than generally, but it was just too big of a hill to climb to try to solve that problem. But we are being used by other states. At this point in time, we're being disadvantaged by other states, and we're not reciprocating. I'd like to find language that, and Mr. Wade and myself, tried to figure this out and couldn't quite do it. But we if we could find that solution, I would make this only applicable to states that had similar laws that impacted Virginia citizens.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Barker.
With that, I would be happy to support something that is responding to what some other state has done to Virginia residents. I'm hesitant to basically declare war on every other state in some form right now and initiate something that will likely result in retaliatory action by other states.
If Senator DeSteff's motion passes, then you will have a year to consider that.
That is very good, and I think what Senator Barker said was contained in Sun Tzu's Art of War. So at any rate, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor of passing the bill by the day? Okay,
Ayes 9, noes 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Senator Edwards.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is a one-word bill too. You change the number 85 to 135.
Are we referring to the ages of judges now?
The ages of judges, the ages of legislators, maybe. The origins of this bill are this. Robert Givens.
What's the bill number, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's bill number 1300. Good round figure.
Thank you.
1300. Robert Givens, a constituent of mine in Harrisburg, operates Givens Funeral Home. He would like to, he's acquired a funeral home in Narrows, 5 miles away. And currently, one operator of a funeral home cannot service 2 funeral homes. One operator cannot service 2 funeral homes within a 50 miles area if he performs more than 85 services each year on average over a 3-year period. He'd like to expand that time period, the number of services he can provide, to 135 from 85. One of the reasons is more and more people are having, or more and more families are asking for cremation versus burial. And it's a lot cheaper to do cremations than it is burial. And so what this bill does is increase from 85 to 135 the number of services for one manager of record of 2 funeral establishments in 2 locations within a 50-mile area. That's what it does, and I believe it's supported by the Virginia Funeral Directors Association. I have 2 people here, I believe, who would like to speak on behalf of the bill.
Well, let's try in opposition first. Is anybody in here in opposition to the bill? Then I think your presentation was good enough for us to speak on. Unless
Glad to
somebody has a
know it's so
question.
eloquent.
Is there a motion? Properly moved and second, the bill be reported. All right, very good.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 1345 is before the committee. And what it is, it's a competitive negotiation process for professional services. So it amends the Virginia Public Procurement Act to allow public agencies to negotiate with the top 2 bidders of a contract. Right now, it's the lowest price bidder who must be awarded the contract, and it really ties the hands of public bodies in terms of being able to negotiate perhaps even a better price, but more importantly, being able to negotiate a good value for their dollar. My bill does exempt architectural and engineering services, so that's something I want to note. And I do want to remind the committee that this bill was voted out by the committee last year and did pass the Senate. It did not pass the House of Representatives, so House of Delegates.
Either one.
Excuse me, either
Pass
one.
Either one. All right.
So, thank you. I hope that the committee finds it within itself to pass this bill.
Okay, is there anyone here in opposition to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Rob Bohannon with Hunt Andrews Kurth representing the Virginia Transportation Construction Alliance. Our concern with the bill is that it repeals longstanding and successful processes for procuring professional services by negotiating with the most qualified firm first, and we think it might be inconsistent with federal requirements for quality-based selection on any project with federal funds as well.
Thank you. Senator Reeves.
Rob, before you run off, can you maybe explain to the committee the way it was traditionally done, as in you get the head bidder and you negotiate with them first before you go to number 2? I think this is totally wiping that away and bidding number one against number 2 instead of that process. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
So that would almost give an undue hardship to who's ever sending the project out to bid. I think in my personal opinion, and I would hope you would agree that it would actually potentially could cost more.
It could. I'm not 100% sure of that. I know it's sort of different, diverges from wherever the current process that has worked for a long time. I'm not sure about the cost differential.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Rob.
Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Does anyone wish to speak in favor of?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Jeff Gore on behalf of Loudoun County. This bill does accommodate concerns we've heard from architects and engineers, and you all amended the bill to that effect last year. So this is in a posture that you reported out last year. And the whole point, Senator Reeves, to your question, is to create more transparency and more competition. Every other form of competitive negotiation, you can compare prices except for professional services. So this is the scenario. The public body issues an RFP. You rank on qualifications. That's the same as for other competitive procurement. However, you have no ability to compare pricing, even price estimates. So you have to pick the first firm based solely on qualifications and try to negotiate a price and close a deal with them. If you can't, you have no ability to go, between firms and just get estimates of pricing. You really have to, if that breaks down, you have to go to the next one and the next one and so on. So it is correct that format has been in the Procurement Act since its inception. However, the goal here is to provide more competition and to look out for taxpayer dollars, and that's what we think this does. So,
Jeff, let me ask a scenario.
Yes, sir.
If the top one is way above number 2, and we're going to allow a back and forth between a well-qualified company and a marginally qualified company, are we going to get in trouble?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, you would never know that the first one is way above because
I'm talking about qualifications.
Qualifications, the whole point of going through the competitive negotiation process and choosing an RFP versus a closed sealed bidding process is so you're not stuck with the lowest bidder who may not be the best qualified. So philosophically, I agree that the public body is going to want to pick the most qualified, but they also want to balance it with getting the best value. And I think the concern has been, well, we can go through this process, but we're really in the dark as far as pricing. I think the more sophisticated the entity, the more they have staff who can do estimates on their end, and they have a better sense for what is the right sort of price range. But for smaller localities that don't have that on staff experience, they're really in the dark on pricing.
I think I understand what you're dancing around, but it sounds like to me if you've got 2 companies that are just about equally qualified,
correct,
then what you're doing is doing a little haggling between those. But my greater concern is that the second one down, you got 2 bidders, the second one is way below in quality and in expertise, and you're going to allow that person to come out with a price. And then it's going to go to the governing body, and they say, so this is going to cost us this, but these guys are going to do it for 20 cents on the dollar. Which one should we take?
Right.
How do you deal with that?
Well, under you're still going to have to award the contract to a qualified firm. So if someone doesn't meet the basic minimum qualifications, they wouldn't make it to that point in the procurement. In other words, for a construction project, if you go through the competitive sealed bidding process, as long as they're qualified, you have to go with the lowest price. So in the competitive negotiation format, typically, except for professional services, you get to balance, look at price, but not base it solely on price. So, to your point, could a public body make the decision on price and go with a much less qualified vendor? Potentially. And that's one reason why the bill carves out A&E, because, and to the point earlier about road projects, I think that's the only professional services that would be relevant for road projects is architecture and engineering. The other professional services are medicine, accounting, law, things like that. So surveying. So these are other services so surveying could come into play, but not architecture and engineering.
This sounds like the TV commercial I've been hearing recently. It's okay. But
And it is optional, Mr. Chair. So this would just allow, and then the other way this is drafted, the other provision is that the public body could only do this if it doesn't ask for non-binding estimates. So that's the other unique thing of professional procurement is currently you can ask for non-binding estimates. And we've heard from years complaints of the professional vendor community that they think that's sort of a farce. Why are we giving you a non-binding estimate? Let's get to the final procurement phase, then we'll talk price, because these can be complex projects that take a while to hone in on. So this is qualified. You'd only have the ability to do this, to negotiate with the top two, if you didn't ask for non-binding estimates. So we thought that helped the process too.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the last examples are very helpful. There are lack of transparency that you would normally see in a procurement when it comes to these things. And so understanding what the pricing gap is actually very helpful. To flip it, where you have a case example where you have two almost equally qualified firms. And so right now you'd be blind whether you're going to spend $500,000 more than the firm that is equal or near equal. And so I think this is actually a very helpful tool to help taxpayers actually get the best bang for their buck in procurements. And it gives an additional tool for local governments to help make those decisions. And with that, I'd move to pass the bill.
Okay. Moved and
To
second.
report.
Moved and second that the bill be reported.
Mr.
Further
Chairman,
conversation?
I have one more question.
I'm sorry.
I have one more selfish question.
All right.
It's my recollection from that wonderful briefing we had over the summer. I don't know if somebody can answer this for me, but that legal services are exempted from the procurement process, which I think you said something about legal services, but I think they're completely out, aren't they?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, they're defined as professional services in the Procurement Act, but later in the Procurement Act, there is a carve-out that exempts them from public bodies from having to competitively procure them. Yes.
Further question, non-selfish. Just so I'm clear what I'm voting on then, if we're not talking about A&E or legal, what's left? Accountants and
Yes.
who else?
Doctors, accountants, surveyors. I don't have the definitions in front of me.
Okay.
Maybe your staff does.
Oh, here, got it right here. Okay, thank you. Got it.
But there's no difference in attorneys, so because they all pass the bar, so they're all equal, right? Okay. We have a motion before us to report the bill. All in favor, record your votes.
Ayes 6, noes 8.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Senator Cosgrove,
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Senate Bill 1086. This is a fairly simple technical change to the Common Interest Board, Common Community Interest Board regulations. Basically, the bill deletes language that required a formal hearing and imposed two deadlines governing the issuance of temporary cease and desist orders by the board. The effect of the deadlines, when considered with the frequency in which the board meets, along with the requirements for a formal hearing, makes it difficult, if almost not impossible, to effectively issue a temporary cease and desist order on a covered board. The amendment deletes the hearing requirement and the arbitrary deadlines and requires that the board make a finding of fact in writing as opposed to requiring a formal hearing. The result of these amendments will conform the process for issuing temporary cease and desist orders with a similar procedure in the Condominium Act. Mr. Chairman, this is brought at the request of DPOR and the Common Interest Community Board, and that's pretty much the bill.
Is anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded, the bill be reported. Record your votes.
Ayes 14, no zero.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Senator Dance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have before you, I hope, Senate Bill 1111, and it's a bill that would prohibit state agencies from including on any employment application a question inquiring whether
I'm sorry, Senator Dance, what was the number again?
Do I have it right? 1199? What do you have?
Okay, I'm sorry. Either I misheard or you misspoke. One of the two.
Okay. It might have been a little bit of both, Mr. Chair. It's kind of late in the day. But again, my bill, I guess I would simplify it by saying I refer to it as ban the box, and you've heard this before. And this committee has received my bill very positively. And I hope that that will be the same position today. My bill would require that a prospective employee may not be asked if she has ever been convicted of any crime unless the inquiry takes place after the prospective employee has received a conditional offer of employment, which offer may be withdrawn if the prospective employee has a conviction record that bears a rational relationship to the duties and responsibilities of the position. And this bill includes specific rationales, and it also covers the fact that prohibitions does not apply to applications for employment with law enforcement agencies, fire departments, and emergency medical services agencies. This bill has been accepted, this concept of this bill has been accepted in over 25 states and a lot of the localities and business community. But I would preference that this is our state government related employees that we are referring to. One of the first requirements for an offender who is released from jail or prison is to find a job and start being a productive member of society again. This bill would allow these citizens to play on the same playing field as their counterparts and not worry about their convictions always being the stumbling block between their past and their future. Mr. Chairman, since last year, we just received some information that we can be proud of. It says that in Virginia, we have the lowest recidivism rate in the country. That's awesome. We also have a low employment rate. That's awesome. But it's also a problem for an offender because if he is not given a second chance and he is not able to compete with others who are applying for the same jobs because he might be more qualified and the job might fit, he won't even get a shot at this. And that's been proven to be one of the reasons for recidivism is a loss of hope. But this gives hope, and I see it as an economic bill because most of the people that I deal with when I do all kinds of surveys, jobs rank number one as the priorities they want to work.
Not to interrupt you, but is this the same, exactly the same as it was last year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think that's enough.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like the way you told me to shut up, and I will.
Nobody here in opposition. Is there a motion? Properly moved and second that Senate Bill 1199 be reported. All in favor, record your votes. Okay.
Ayes 10, noes 4.
Bill is reported. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad I listened to you, too.
Okay. Senator Newman is not here. Senator Evan, did you have another one? He's not here either. All right. Let's give.
I've got a bill.
Bill 1219 will be passed by for the day. And while we're in the housekeeping, Senate Bill 1255 should have been referred to Finance, and I would ask that that one be referred to Finance.
So moved.
Properly moved and seconded, 1255 be re-referred to Finance. Record your votes.
I don't have that one in there. I could do it later, though.
Okay, all right.
I get it, hold on.
Strike that idea and we'll,
I'll bring it up.
I thought we sent it over there last week.
That's Bill 1255.
All right. Senator Evan, did you have another bill? All right. Okay, re-refer to fine. All properly moved and second, re-refer. All in favor, vote aye. Or not. Aye.
Aye.
All right. That one's done. Okay.
So
Yes.
if we could, sir, I'd like to start with Senate Bill 1229.
1229.
Yes, and I believe that Mr. Wade has a line amendment. It's a short bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The single amendment is on line 11, after directed to, strike promulgate and insert receive and consider.
And you're maybe moving that emotion, that amendment?
Yes, sir. I move to amend.
And properly moved and second, the amendment that, accept that amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, now present your bill.
Okay. What this bill has to do with is this relatively new kind of athletic facility or facility called a trampoline park. And we've got, I think, a number, 14 at least in the state of Virginia. There's actually an international association of trampoline parks. I wouldn't have thought it, but they've got it. And they recommend that their members regulate themselves for safety, or that they be regulated, and that they support state regulation. However, you can't get a copy of those regulations unless you're a paid member, which I'm not. But we know that there's a lot of injuries in these. We've heard about kids who've been paralyzed from the waist down. There's a lot of moving parts here, so to speak. And the rate of injury has risen with the industry. In the U.S., and this is just the ones we know about, in 2010, there were 600 injuries, and in 2014, there were 6,932. They're more severe than, often more severe than normal trampoline-related injury that you might have in your backyard, from head trauma, broken bones, even death. And in Fairfax County, informally, a survey we got, and I don't know if it is all of them because these are just ones that related to the ambulances where they were categorized. Between the 3 facilities in Fairfax, 17 went to the hospital. And we regulate in Virginia right now what they call amusement devices. So just as you would say perhaps a roller coaster can't go 90 miles on a curve or whatever, you could say that a trampoline park could have weight limits for a patron on a particular trampoline, or vertical barriers to see that a high fall into to prevent a high fall into a hard surface or other guests, or that dismounted areas might be padded, or even that the foam pits that they have enough foam in them so that you don't prevent head and neck injuries. And rather than put this in the code, all of this, I just want the board to regulate this. And I brought a witness, a constituent of mine, who had an unfortunate experience at one of these parks. His name is Larry Altenberg. If he could address the committee.
All right. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Larry Altenberg, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. With proper use and supervision, trampolines can be very exciting to use, and at the most elite levels, trampolining is an Olympic sport, highlighting athletes with incredible strength, control, and gymnastic ability. At the same time, trampolining is an inherently dangerous activity with hundreds of thousands of injuries suffered by casual trampoline users every year. It's important that the risks of their use are more broadly exposed and regulated, especially to the general public. Trampoline parks, as you've heard, have become a burgeoning industry in the Commonwealth. They offer dynamic arrangements of trampolines to the general public and provide free jumping time, structured workouts with trainers, birthday parties, and so forth. Although all participants are asked to sign a waiver relieving the park operator of nearly all responsibility in the case of injury or death, the parks also provide little to no training or instruction to those participating in open free jumping time. The sense of comfort that trampoline parks provide belie the dangers and risks of injury that are too easily suffered by recreational trampoline users. In my situation, I was chaperoning a youth group trip to Flight Trampoline Park in Springfield, Virginia on February 28, 2016. My family and I were enjoying our time at the park until about 20 minutes into our time at the park when I suffered a tragic injury. While jumping alone on a single-person trampoline, I ruptured my patellar tendons in both knees. I wasn't doing anything tricky. I was just jumping. My surgeons, the orthopedic trauma and sports physicians at Inova Fairfax Hospital told me that they've only seen my kind of injury in elite athletes. So at least I'm in good company. Long story short, and I'm happy to be able to laugh about it today, after 6 surgeries, 5 hospitalizations, 3 weeks in a rehabilitation hospital, I've only been walking without crutches, a cane, or a brace for about 6 months now. And I still have residual mobility issues. As a result of my injuries, I've been in extensive rehabilitation on disability leave for 24 of the last 36 months. I've paid over $100,000 in medical and home modification expenses, and I've required home care for 18 months out of the past 3 years. My family income has suffered significantly, and I've been recovering personally and professionally ever since. My conversations with the first responders and caregivers really opened my eyes to the extreme dangers of trampolines not discussed by the parks. When responding to the 911 call to the trampoline park, the Fairfax County Rescue Squad EMTs needed assistance from a fire company to move me safely from the trampoline. They told their dispatcher that they were located at the, quote, usual place. When I asked them, they said that they responded to a serious injury at the flight trampoline park at least once every day. The emergency room staff at Inova Fairfax said that trampoline injuries account for a high percentage of their trauma injuries, and that they would never allow their families to go to a trampoline park or own a personal trampoline at home. I've learned of many anecdotal cases of children and adults suffering injuries at trampoline parks, but just to cite the federal government's data, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission reported that 2014, there are nearly 286,000 medically treated trampoline injuries and over 104,000 emergency department visits. Between 2002 and 2011, there were more than 1 million emergency department visits for trampoline-related injuries. It has become so high that the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons both have warned against children under 6 from using a trampoline and have advised against recreational trampoline use in general. I have spoken to 3 different personal injury attorneys about whether there was a case to be had against the trampoline park, and they all indicated that due to the lack of regulation of trampoline parks, winning a case against one was nearly impossible. Trampolines have specific requirements for how they are to be maintained, weight capacities they can support, the number of people that can use a trampoline at one time, and their usable lifespans, requiring replacement after a certain period. Without regulation, proper inspections, and oversight, trampoline parks are not required to ensure the safety of their equipment or their customers, and they do not disclose to the public their maintenance and safety protocols or the occurrence of injuries at their facilities. I ask this committee and the members of the Senate to enhance the safety of our communities by applying regulations onto trampoline parks. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill? Senator Abbott, it seemed like there would be 3 ways to deal with this. 1, just outright ban them. 2, to make sure that they're well insured and insurance companies will take care of the problem. Or 3, to hire some bureaucrats to make rules that may or may not help. And you chose the 3rd.
That's correct. And it's not necessary to hire any new bureaucrats. There is a board already that regulates, I think it was the Board of Housing and Community Development, and they already promulgate regulations dealing with amusement parks. This is pretty serious. When you're in an amusement park, at least you're strapped into the ride, and that ride is inspected annually. If we just say that they have to be padded, or we see this on American Ninja Warrior, the things that you see on the side of the obstacles they go through, and these are athletes, and they still take those precautions. I don't necessarily want, this does not close them, and this does not require them to have insurance. I don't know if that's something that they would recommend in regulation, but we just heard what Mr. Altenberg went through, $100,000 in medical expenses, out of work, that sort of thing. I don't want this to happen to more of my constituents or to yours. I think that saying that there'll be regulations and not prescribing how onerous they have to be and letting people hear testimony and see what's appropriate would be a good course to take. And I hope that's the one the committee will take.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, you may be exactly right. This may be the best way. Sounds like to me they're pretty dangerous anyway, and once you start jumping, and I hope that it will not relieve the operators from any liability
No.
because they're following state regulations.
Well,
Mr. Chair. Over here.
Senator,
Speaking to your question or statement, I guess.
yeah.
So I think what the gentleman said, and I think what Senator Evans also saying, is that simply all these places have insurance, right? I mean, everybody who has a commercial establishment, they typically have a commercial general liability policy. And most of those policies also have a provision on them for medical payments. In the legal world, insurance world, we call it med pay. And typically the med pay part will cover any medical bills for anybody injured on your premises, usually up to about $10,000 without regard to fault. So no matter whether anybody's at fault or not, they'll cover that. The liability piece, however, typically for $1 million or more, only applies if you can show that somebody was negligent. And in order to show somebody's negligent, you have to show that there was some standard they violated, either a community standard, or if there's regulations or a statute, you can point at that rule and say, they violated that bright line rule. And I think what the gentleman said is the 3 lawyers he's talked to have said that because there's no rules on this, the only way to prove a case is you have to go out and try and find a trampoline park expert. And I'm not sure how many of those really exist. But if we had some clear rules about this that lawyers could point to, then you could actually use the insurance, which I think you would like people to go get to ensure that when people are injured through no fault of their own, they have the ability to recover. So I think without these regs, it's very hard to touch that insurance, except for that little $10,000 policy I mentioned. So I think that's the point.
Well, thank you for enlightening me, but I simply was just going by our situation in our church. They come in on an annual basis and say, this ought to happen, and you're going to be liable if you don't do it. And so that's the way it's dealt with. So anyway. Okay, any further conversation?
Mr. Chair, I have a question of the patron if he knows. I'm just curious to know what, if anything, other states have done to regulate trampoline parks.
It's a basic, they're a new concept, but or relatively new, they're spreading, but there are some other places that do regulation that we know that Arizona, Tennessee, Colorado, Kansas, New Hampshire, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, and Utah County, Utah, do, according to some ASTM, which is Association Trampoline something. They do have safety standards, and the association of these parks is asking or has recommended to their members that they seek regulation to their standards. So we're not necessarily suggesting that we put some overly onerous burden on them to put up a sign on which ones can accommodate which weights or which ones should have extra padding when you dismount. And if you were to have your kid fall onto the concrete outside, then that maybe they have to have a barrier on that side of the trampoline for some reason. So yes, the answer is yes, they are being regulated. It's not a new concept.
I would just say, Mr. Chair, I'm a frequent flyer at one of the trampoline parks in Senator Pike's district. And I would say that with some frequency, I spend time at these trampoline parks, and to your point, they are incredibly crowded, and they are like any amusement, like go-karts or amusement parks. It's just curious to me that there is an amount of exposure, and there's clearly a way to prevent any additional injury. And what you're saying is that the trampoline parks themselves would like an element of self-regulation, and the way for them to do this is to come to us and ask for us to do this for them.
That's what their association recommends, yes.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to report, given, I think, the answers of the esteemed attorney, Senator Servell, as well as Senator Vogel's outstanding experiences in the 29th Senate District.
All right, is there a second? All right, properly moved and second, the bill be reported. Record your votes.
Ayes 9, noes 5.
Bill is reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Senate Bill 998 is one that we've heard a number of times before. The committee has passed it a number of times. This has to do with non-discrimination in government employment within Virginia. And I'm not going to go through the whole rigmarole unless there are questions. I will just say that for nearly a decade now, the federal government has prohibited discrimination on the basis of orientation or gender identity in the federal workforce covering more than 2.5 million people, and that we've done this since 2005, but from 2010 to 2014, they were not in effect. And I'd like there to be consistency. And I would say, in anticipation of any religious objections, that supervisors of government employees are prohibited from discriminating against or harassing employees of another faith, even if they have a fundamental religious objection to the belief or religious practices of their colleague. So why would a supervisor or government employee likewise not be prohibited from discriminating against and harassing LGBT people? We've talked in past years about the Fortune 500 companies in Virginia, and that we believe that each one of the 19 Virginia Fortune 500 companies that the Human Rights Campaign has surveyed do have these protections in place for sexual orientation, most, I believe, with gender identity as well. This is the future, and we're attracting highly skilled workers to Virginia and forward-thinking companies, and I'd like to keep up that trend and just make it clear to state employees that they're not protected depending on who's governor or not.
Thank you. Is anyone here to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 998? Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Josh Hetzer with the Family Foundation. I won't repeat my earlier comments. I'll simply re-refer you to those, but I would add that due to a recent FOIA request, we have confirmed that in the 8 years of tracking these complaints on these bases, there have been 0 founded complaints, and I think there have been about 1 to 2 on average complaints per year. And then I would just add that while by contrast, we're not seeing any issues here in state government relative to sexual orientation, gender identity, but some of you may have heard about a high school French teacher, Peter Vlaming, who just last month lost his job at West Point High School for simply not being able to refer to a female student by male pronouns. This teacher was willing to call the student by the student's preferred name and was willing to not use any pronouns at all. That wasn't good enough. So I tell you this just to underscore that the discrimination that is taking place relative to these issues is happening to people of faith. And I believe that that is going to be happening more and more with passage of bills like this. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Barker.
It seems you talk about there not being any founded cases, but how could there be a founded case if this is not already covered in the law?
Mr. Chairman, there is an executive order for that. And nevertheless, they do look into the complaints and determine whether they are founded. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Welcome.
Eddie Aliff, Executive Director of the Virginia Assembly of Independent Baptists. I know in a previous bill that Mr. Hetzler had mentioned the fact that I'm concerned, and our concern as well, of creating a new class which has such undefined and basically unlimited definition. And so we are concerned about that aspect of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members, my name is Michael Zales, and regarding this bill, the part that I have, well, first of all, you all should have a copy of my email. I had it sent through the operations. My last name is Szieles. The particular concern is, as we're talking here, is with teachers in public schools. In my opinion, this bill will allow teachers with what Christians would consider as immoral behavior to teach our children immoral behavior, either directly or indirectly. I have discussed this bill with pastors of conservative Christian churches, as well as my Chesterfield Clover Hill District School Board member, Diane Smith, who were not aware of this bill. And I asked Diane, I said to her, and I told her I don't expect an answer to this question, but I said, what are you going to do if a parent comes to you and says, I don't want my child being taught by a man who's wearing a dress? And I also asked her, I said, what are you going to do if a parent comes to you and says, a teacher says one day, I want the class to refer to me as a he. The next day, I want the class to refer to me as a she. And the next day, I want the class to refer to me as neither a he or a she. And this is not a joke, okay? Her response was that she would like to know the stand of my senator, Senator Sturdivant. I believe this bill is another step towards increasing immorality. And I say this without hate or bigotry. And I support that by saying in my family, I have 2 siblings that are homosexuals. That includes both a gay and a lesbian. They are both married, so technically, if you include my in-laws, I have 4 homosexual siblings. I also have another heterosexual sibling. I consider myself a heterosexual. I would like to address some of these religious organizations that are not quite as conservative as others. They support this bill. In my opinion, is that their belief is contrary to Scripture. They were basically taking what I call the politically correct scriptures and not discussing what I call the politically incorrect scriptures. And if I may, I'd like to quote about 5 verses from the Bible.
Let's restrict it to 2.
2? Okay. Those 2 first would be, this one deals with homosexuality, very short. Leviticus chapter 18, verse 22. You shall not lie with a male as one lies with a female. It is an abomination. The second verse would be Deuteronomy 22, chapter 22, verse 5. A woman shall not wear man's clothing, nor shall a man put on a woman's clothing. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord our God. Blessings to your committee. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Appreciate it. Okay, is anybody else in opposition to the bill? Is anyone here in support of the bill? Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman. I am James Parris with Equality Virginia. As already has been mentioned, this is a bill that's been in front of this committee for many years, and it has passed 5 years out of Senate General Laws, including last year, 12-3. Just to reflect on some of the things that already have been said, this is a bill that's about merit. We believe that if you work for the government and you're a tax-paying citizen, you should be hired and fired based on your abilities, not on who you love or how you identify. Also, when we're addressing teachers, we expect our teachers to provide a positive learning environment for all of our students in public schools. And just as teachers of different faiths can't decide which faith's children they want to teach and not teach in our public schools, neither should our parents be having the size of like who the teachers are, not based on their faith or other things that have nothing to do with the merit. In reference to a teacher in West Point, that teacher was fired by the school board and the administration based on conduct, not following the orders of their administrators of what they should and should not be doing. I also would point out that I have driven through there, dined there. I think West Point is a very lovely town, but it also is not the liberal bastion of our Commonwealth. And if West Point understands the conduct that should be and should not be allowed by their teachers, it is something the state can do as well in making sure that all of our public employees, again, are hired or not hired or fired based on the job they're doing and not on the pronouns they use or the person they love or how they identify. So I hope we'll have your support again on this bill. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Troy Murphy. I represent the Northern Virginia Technology Council, NVTC. NVTC supports legislation that would extend basic job protections by prohibiting employers from discriminating based on sexual orientation. In addition to fostering fair treatment in the workplace, such legislation would benefit technology employers by promoting employment and retention of a critical talent pool, and also would benefit higher education institutions in their recruitment and retention of faculty and researchers who train the workforce and help drive our innovation economy. And VTC supports this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else to testify? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question here. Senator Edmund, I'm probably one of the few people here who have found it necessary to read the Washington Blade for a period of several years. Very, very familiar with it, and I recall that repeatedly one of the key themes was that homosexual individuals and homosexual couples enjoyed much higher income than other families. And so we have the fact that there is no recorded instance of sexual discrimination. And based on the Washington Blade, which is certainly biased, but does rather accurate reporting, they reported that the income among this community is considerably higher. And I just don't understand what the point of the bill is other than pure ideology. I don't know what we're achieving.
Mr. Chairman, if I might address that. First off, in terms of the salaries, I think that there is another study that you might find interesting. It's from the Williams Institute at the University of California, Los Angeles, which studies exclusively matters dealing with sexual orientation, where they found, on average, lesbians in particular were paid at a lower rate. Further, this is not about the private sector. This is in the government, and I was neglectful in that I didn't mention it also covers status as a veteran, marital status, and pregnancy or childbirth or related medical condition. The others, some others are already in the code. But I think that it's a generalization to say that gay people make more. Whether or not the LGBT paper in the Washington, D.C. metro area surveys their readers as a part of a study to show what their readers make is one thing. This is more than an ideology bill. I can tell you when I worked outside of the government, I had a supervisor who said, "Isn't it great we don't have any fags working for us?" to me on one of my first days at work. Needless to say, I did not come out there. I think we want a good environment, and we want to make it clear to all of our supervisors. And in response to what one of the gentlemen said earlier, I think he's misunderstanding what people do when they transition, people with a gender identity different than the gender that they were born with. People do not show up in a dress one day at school. They do not go back and forth again. There are not cases like that in Virginia. People who do transition to their true gender typically do it as a gradual process, presumably over the summer or whatever, to begin. But I'd like to hear cases about how horrible that's been in Virginia. Basically, we want to say to people, if you want to work for the state, just come and show us your merit. In terms of the cases in Virginia, I would say if there were no founded cases of discrimination against people because they're African American or women or others, we would still want that in the code regardless. Let's just keep it, get it done, and keep it so there's no doubt among people when they go to work for the government as to whether or not they can stay working for the government should they get a supervisor who might think otherwise. And this is not about the private sector. It's the government. Should the government discriminate, or should the government say, we just hire you whether or not you're talented, and that's the only basis that you stay on?
Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to offer a little perspective on this for the moment, because I think many people are not aware that this is already the subject of an executive order in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and there's a reason that that's the case. I sat on this committee when that was the subject of some controversy, when a newly elected governor, there was some lag time between the election of that governor and the enactment of that executive order. And the subject was being discussed by this committee, and it then created some turmoil in the Commonwealth of Virginia, because I think it is the case, notwithstanding someone's deeply held religious belief, and I respect the comments made by those who spoke, but there is an underlying issue that we haven't talked about here, and that hasn't been raised in any of this testimony, and that is that in the Commonwealth of Virginia, absent some statement, a clear statement of our anti-discrimination policy, which a governor has stepped in and exercised in the absence of our statement of flat, basic anti-discrimination by the Commonwealth of Virginia. The absent some statement by us, we have an issue in the Commonwealth of Virginia that other companies, others who wish to contract with us, our colleges and universities, other contractors, have a policy that their companies must abide by that says we will not contract with anybody who does not have anti-discrimination policies that are consistent with our own. And that is very common in business practices as a matter of legal exposure. So it may not be an issue today in the Commonwealth of Virginia at this moment because we have an executive order. But the reason that this bill comes before us year after year is because each governor must issue that executive order to remedy that issue. And so I would just take the position, as many of my colleagues have said in previous debates over this issue, why wouldn't we just say that the Commonwealth of Virginia, as a state, does not discriminate on any basis when we are looking, period. Yes, as Senator Reeves just said, when we are looking to hire somebody to perform an IT job in the Commonwealth of Virginia. If we in the Senate are trying to hire somebody to do an IT job, what we care about is the merit of that individual. Who is the best person for that job? And so for me, that does not make this a hard vote. And for all the other legal issues that it raises in the absence of us saying that we don't discriminate, I just feel like, we should support the position of non-discrimination. And again, this is simply stating that this is the state's policy. This is state hiring. And I think this gets muddled a lot as we get communications from people in our district or others. And frankly, I don't get that many communications about this bill anymore. There was a time when I did. Almost nobody emails about this any longer because I think most people believe that the state flat out should not discriminate. But for those who do, I think they misunderstand maybe what the impact of this is, but this is simply a statement about what the Commonwealth of Virginia should do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else wish to speak on the bill? Properly moved and seconded that the bill be reported. Record your votes.
Ayes 11, noes 3.
Bill is reported.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I think this is my final bill for today, which is Senate Bill 1233, and it has to do with Kaspersky Lab, a Russian-owned software technology company. And the council was working to come up with an amended enactment clause. I don't know if he has that.
Yes.
Want to report that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are 6 line amendments, and the line amendments have the effect of the study that is contained in the second enactment clause will be limited to electoral boards rather than all public bodies. And finally, that the study would be due no later than November 1st, 2020 instead of 2019.
Okay, thank you. I move the amendment.
Okay. Is there a second? Properly moved and second that the bill be amended as Amigo just stated it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Okay, so what this bill does is it bans the use of their software for government agencies, not just at the state level where they're already recommended or not used by VITA. But what this company does is and it would include legislative bodies, state agencies, local commissioners, the governor, commissioners of revenue, and particularly it would include electoral boards as well. Because what we don't want, as has happened nationally, is Kaspersky to breach security through another system. And we know that, for example, the Israeli government, when they went and compromised Kaspersky Labs themselves, the cybersecurity company in Russia, and they led them to find out, they were able to tip off U.S. officials that a former contract had classified data from the National Security Agency on his home computer. And I got one note from someone who's in Capitol Square who said, I'll tell you, my brother does a lot of work he's not allowed to tell me about, but he's told me never to use Kaspersky. Now, they're known as a hostile actor. This particular company, they've used this antivirus software to search millions of U.S. computers to steal highly sensitive U.S. government information. Federal Department of Homeland Security has recommended, they banned actually all 430 departments, agencies, and offices comprising the U.S. government to scrub their systems for any software made by Kaspersky Lab. And particularly troubling is the fact that a lot of people are using the software don't know it. They don't know that it's related. So we need to tell them not to use it. We need to allow VITA to disseminate that information and to check, particularly with the electoral boards. We know that during the 2016 election, at least 2 Russian intelligence groups were implicated in hacks, and that they gained access to, they tried to gain access to voter registration in 21 states, attacked U.S. voting system software company, illegally obtained the emails of local election officials. So it's an extreme risk to allow the use of these labs at the, even at the local level or at the state level. So I think we should memorialize that in the Section 1 bill.
Thank you. Is there anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill 1233? All right. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question. Senator Hubbard, I spent the early part of my military career as part of the Cold War, and trained in Germany in the Fulda Gap in case the Russians were going to come over. So I can tell you I'm not pro-Russian, but I am curious, maybe Amigo can answer this question. Have we ever named an individual private entity and barred them in the code section of the Virginia General Assembly's code from doing business? Is this new land that we're...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we were drafting this, we could not find where that had been done before, but I would say that I think that that VITA currently has a rule that's in place that does this very thing.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question. Maybe my esteemed colleague that's an attorney on the other end named Servo can troubleshoot this, but maybe I spend too much time in courts of justice as well. But couldn't they just reorganize and call themselves something else and go through a bankruptcy and come back in as something else?
Mr. Chairman, can I respond?
May you respond?
I mean, and I would say that's one of the reasons you typically don't name things like this. And it seems to me that problem could easily be solved by giving VITA the authority to promulgate a list of entities that you can't do business with, like Kaspersky, and that would probably get to the same result.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One quick question and then recommendation. Normally something like this we would see in regulation, and I believe VITA has the authority to do this today. Do we know which organizations are using it today, Adam?
We don't know, but I will say this. VITA, I don't think, has the authority to issue regulations over local government. And with this, we're directing that the local government shall not. And if you look at lines 27 to 29, I think that has the spirit of what would answer Senator Reeves' question, but I understand Senator Servel's response as well. This is a pretty bad actor. And the reason I went after them or targeted them in this bill is that the Department of Homeland Security said they're a threat to not just our federal government, to local governments as well and state governments. And I want to make sure that we don't have them infiltrate our systems to undermine confidence, whether it's in our Department of Elections or by getting access to the Commissioner of Revenue files and then using that somehow to go after our taxation, taxpayers and their Social Security numbers.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, one more.
It's a Section 1 bill, too. Those
Understand. Like, the state police has certain folks that, and certain individuals that they won't allow our officers to, whether it's an establishment they are not allowed to go into, whether it's certain organizations they're not allowed to associate with. We do this throughout government already. I'm not sure the best way to do this, and I do understand it's a Section 1 bill. I know there's another way. There's got to be a more, efficient way to really handle this. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not saying I know it, but there's got to be a better way because they're not the only company, and all they have to do is create a subsidiary under another name, and they can do the same thing again somewhere else. Or they could, instead of a subsidiary, they can create a new organization. It's super easy to set up a new company name, and on the international front, all they have to do is create a new organization and do the exact same thing. So I think there's a better way to get at this. Again, I don't know what it is, but to really focus more on giving VITA or giving an organization the authority to do this at all levels and promulgate that down to local government.
Mr. Chairman.
I don't know what the approach is.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, over here. So, Mr. Chairman, speaking to the bill, I guess, no motion's been made yet. I was just Googling around over here, and I see that the Department of Homeland Security banned Kaspersky pursuant to something called their Binding Operational Directive 17-01 in September of 2017. And it seems to me that one way of doing it might be to say that nobody can do business with anybody. The Department of Homeland Security has issued a binding operational directive prohibiting anybody from doing business with, and that would solve the problem. The problem is I don't know how many other businesses there might be on that list or something without looking at it further, but it seems to me that's the way to do it and get the same result. And having said that, it seems to me that it sounds like the committee in general is in favor of the policy, just not the method, and I would wonder whether the gentleman or the committee would be disposed to take it by for a week and then come back with a little revision to it to maybe get there.
I would be fine with that. We could prepare a substitute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, that completes you. Senator Reeves.
Reeves, you still want to take your 1247 re-refer to Ed and Hill?
Yeah, let's do that first. Mr. Chairman, you had Senator Marston's bill that was a casket bill, basically, that we sent to the committee I chair. I'd just like to take, which one is it there?
1247.
1247, re-refer it to the Committee on Social Service and Rehab. I make that motion.
Ed and Health or Rehab?
Or Ed and Health, excuse me. Ed and Health, not back to me. Ed and Health, sorry.
Ed and Health.
Mr. Chairman, I guess we'll start with 1241, the Veteran Service Board of increases membership and clarifies the scope of responsibilities. If we could do that one first. Mr. Chairman, this came as part of the Board of Veteran Services. I serve on that at the pleasure of the chairman of this committee. And in 2016, the Board of Veteran Services was reorged to have each member be appointed contact for each of the Department of Veteran Services service line director, and more actively support and advise the commissioner Commissioner Newby. Currently, BVS shares responsibility with the War Memorial, of which Senator DeSteph is on. And this year's there's a bill for the War Memorial Board sunsetting January 1st. And I believe Senator DeSteph is carrying that bill. Is that correct? This additional of 3 seats will ensure the continued robust support of the War Memorial. But how does this address the issue? The 3 new members will be assigned to the War Memorial for their point of contact assignments. Additionally, the chairman of the War Memorial Foundation Board will be added as an ex officio member. The foundation itself is a 501c3 that supports the memorial, and they have their own board, to which all these members know that. So what does this legislation do? It's a bill to consolidate policy oversight within the Board of Veteran Services. At the November 2018 meeting, the Board of Veteran Services, of which I was there, were briefed on this. This resolution and the impending request to increase membership of the BVS, they voted in favor. So that's what the bill is, Mr. Chairman, and at the pleasure of the committee, I'd make a motion to pass the bill, barring questions. Mr. Chairman, the next bill I have is Senate Bill 1246. That's a bill to amend and reenact 4483 of the Code of Virginia related to the Virginia National Guard, their state active duty pay. I do have some members of the National Guard here. Our newly minted colonel from Light Colonel is here as well that can help us with kind of the issue, but let me just give you a background on it. It had been in the past when our members of our National Guard are called up to duty for state active duty, not federal duty, that they work very long hours, probably longer than 12 hours a day. But sadly, they're not even making federal minimum wage. A lot of our National Guard soldiers, depending on their rank. And what this does is this is not only a way that we can help retain some of those guardsmen to stay in the Guard, but also as a recruitment tool. And what this amendment or what this bill will do is bring them up to parity, so at least they're making federal minimum wage. And I can kind of give you some examples, or I can let the colonel explain some, but the state active duty pays are determined by the Department of Defense pay tables. So a soldier or airman that's an E1, which is basically just starting out, would earn about $89.75 a day. So we all get paid, I don't know how much per day per diem. And so if you think about what our guardsmen are out doing, and that's before taxes. So you take out taxes and maybe they're at 60, 70 bucks if we're lucky. So that's making our soldiers at the E1 level earn $7.48 per hour, less than the federal minimum wage. So that's what this is doing. There's nearly 2,570 National Guard personnel on state active duty to respond to hurricanes, winter storms, and flooding. So that's what this does. And barring questions, I'll have the colonel come up and speak.
Afternoon, sir. As Senator Reese says, this is put forth by the Department of Military Affairs. We're just trying to get some parity, a decent rate of pay for our soldiers who come on state active duty. As Senator Reese says, they work long hours. I mean, typically it's 12 hours at least. Often it's much more than that. We have to advise our commanders to ensure our soldiers get sleep when they're on state active duty. And snow missions, again, sleep is hard to come by sometimes. They're working these long hours. They don't get to go home. They don't get put up in a hotel. They sleep in their armory overnight. We've had issues with some of our junior soldiers, especially if they're on duty for an extended period of time, like we saw on the Virgin Islands mission a year or so ago. It's a significant economic hardship for them to come on to state active duty. What we're asking is that the minimum rate of pay be that of an E6, a staff sergeant with 18 years of service. That'd be $125 per day for a 12-hour day, which again is typically the minimum amount of work that they're doing on a state active duty day. That's a little over $10 an hour. And again, you can argue that the day of duty is really 24 hours because they're not going home. They're sleeping on a cot in the armory typically. So we're just asking for parity. We don't get overtime when we're state active duty. We're not like police officers, firefighters, that type of thing. So we just, we're asking for a reasonable rate of pay for our soldiers.
Thank you. Is anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill 1246? Hearing none, the motion, proper motion would be to report and re-refer to finance. So moved and seconded. Record your votes. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Black.
Mr. Chairman, this is Senate Bill 1153. What this does is it deals with job order contracting. We have an existing statute that provides that job order contracting can be used, but will not exceed $5 million as a maximum threshold amount. What this does is it adjusts it basically for inflation, and it brings it up to a maximum threshold of $7 million. And then rather than going through this repeatedly over the years, on lines 23 through 26, it says that the threshold amount for this contracting will be adjusted according to the construction cost index. So it'll basically be inflation adjusted so that we don't have to go back and revisit it. However, on lines 27 and 28, it has a restriction saying that notwithstanding the maximum threshold, no individual job order shall exceed $500,000. The other provision, we get down to 39, we had a little bit of controversy that had to be ironed out between the parties, and I believe that we have an amendment there.
Thank you. The amendment is at line 41 after calming measures. Strike the remainder of line 41 and all of lines 42 and 43, and insert for individual job orders up to $250,000, subject to the maximum annual threshold amount established in this section.
Okay, so basically that will limit the amount spent on traffic improvements or basically traffic matters to $250,000, as I understand it. Is Jeff Gould? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I do. I make that motion for that amendment. Okay, Mr. Chairman, other than that, I've got Jeff Gore here to explain any additional matters, and I'm not sure that we have any opposition at this point.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Scott Schuffelbarger, Coalition for Procurement Reform. We have the same issues that we do with cooperative procurement as we do with job order contracting. We've been philosophically opposed to job order contracting, as it is essentially construction by unit cost. We do not think that it is in the best interest of the Commonwealth to do construction by unit cost, and therefore raising the limit and does not improve that situation. So we'd rather see it held at the same level or removed.
Mr. Chairman, Gordon Dixon with Associated General Contractors. We're not actually outright opposed to this bill, but we do have concerns with job order contracting. It does hide some of the transparency. When you're looking at the dollar costs that are being spent, there are several agents or states and other states that have done some audits on job order contracting and have concerns about accountability and oversight. So you're just going down a potentially slippery slope by raising this threshold up. Just want to make you aware. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Jeff Gore on behalf of Loudoun County. That's what's happening in our experience and in the county's experience is, let me just tell you just briefly what job order contract, it's used for projects that can be done according to very detailed specifications that multiple contract, and this is an example of one, of the spec book. So multiple procurement is done, multiple vendors will get on the contract. It could be for clearing out stormwater drainage ditches. It could be for HVAC repair. It's things like that. It's not for major construction projects, obviously, because it's limited to a $500,000 per job cap. This was put in law, I believe, in 2015 after the 2-year procurement study. And at that time, $5 million was largely an arbitrary threshold. It was agreed by the General Assembly and the stakeholders at the time, put some sort of cap on it. Let's see how it works. Well, in our experience and from other localities and state agencies I've spoken with who use it, it's a very efficient method of contracting. It is transparent. Like I said, all the specs are published, so it gives a lot of certainty to the project. So all we're asking here is to marginally increase the annual cap, not make any change to the per job threshold, and index it, so we never have to come back before you again, as Senator Black has said. We address concerns, the amendments address concerns of the road contractors. So they are satisfied with a lower cap on the per job for speed bumps, pothole filling, rumble strips, fixing traffic signs or stoplights, those kind of things. Where in a county like Loudoun, when there's a lot of road construction going on, it's much more efficient to have multiple vendors on contract to fix those things quickly. And it is a public procurement, transparent process that is obviously provided for in the code. This is just a modest increase in the amount.
It almost sounds like you think the perfect bill I had in 2015 was not perfect.
Well, it got it in the code. Before 2015, job order contracting was a practice, federal practice. Some public agencies did it.
I understand that was a joke.
But it wasn't codified. It's just making it perfect now.
Okay, thank you. Any further question? Robert?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Robert Barad with Capital Results here on behalf of the Gordian Group, which is one of the nation's leading providers of job order contracting services. The book that the gentleman showed you there is We Build Those Books. We just wanted to tell you that we're in strong support of this bill, even though we really support no limits on the job order contracting. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Anyone got a motion? Properly moved and seconded that the bill be reported as amended. No further discussion. Record your votes. Suderlin, are you not here?
Okay. I-706.
All right, that bill is reported. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all that I have.
That's all you had. Okay. Who's next? Excuse me? Senator D-Staff, are you ready?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, something like that. One of those days. So we'll go in numerical order if that's okay. The first one up is Senate Bill 1099. So what this has done is a very simple one. It just encourages a purchase of iron and steel and manufactured goods that are made in the United States by state public bodies to the greatest extent possible. It's a great bill, I believe, and Buy American, Made in America. And for steel and iron, right now, we have a tremendous amount that's being recycled, and I think this would help with even more to be recycled and reused. I'm open for questions from there.
Is there anyone here in opposition to bill?
I heard the Chinese government was, but outside of that.
Properly moved and seconded, but before we take the vote, I would point out that one of my folks thanked the Trump administration for their changes, and so we're not getting as much. Okay, all in favor, record your
Chairman,
votes.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, just one question. Do we have enough iron and steel in the United States? I mean, is that industry capable of meeting the needs?
Absolutely. We have so much iron and steel that is waiting to be recycled based on future projected values, et cetera, et cetera. There's a tremendous amount.
Thank you.
The proper motion would be to pass and re-refer to finance. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor, record your votes. Okay, that one is reported. Okay. Next up.
So next one is Senate Bill 1168, the expungement of disciplinary records from DPOR. And Mr. Chairman, what happens is, let's say I'm a contractor and I forget to put a paragraph in my subcontract or in my contract with a builder or a homeowner that I'm building a house for. Well, that's a violation, and that's a black mark on my record in DPOR. And Mr. Chairman, that stays on my record forever and ever and ever. Well, we can expunge a felony, we can expunge a misdemeanor. I'm pretty sure we can even have our driver's license expunged, but we can't get something expunged from DPOR. So what this does simply is it allows for it allows for, not any, but allows for DPOR to have the ability to expunge anything that goes on your record made at least 5 years from the date of the original disposition of the disciplinary record, et cetera, et cetera. Again, it allows for an expungement, a great thing. So I don't think people should have indefinitely black marks on their records for little things like forgetting to put a paragraph in a contract when it's retyped.
Senator DeSteffi, you may be correct, but I possibly might have a piece of legislation that would say that we would extend and wouldn't require re-upping as frequently if there'd been no complaints about it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to include that. We can make it every year if you want.
Okay. Is there anyone here in opposition to Senate Bill 1168? Is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded, Bill 1168 be reported.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just one question for the patron. DPOR reports a number of different things, not just technicalities, but also business practices, labor issues, fraud, many of the things. So under this, if we do have a bad actor, we would allow for an expungement after 5 years. Is that right?
DPOR will look at it, and if they say it's a bad actor who has done something heinous, they don't have to expunge it at all. This allows for that review process to happen. All this does is allows a process to happen.
Senator Pike, did that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye, or record your votes aye.
Sorry. Can we open it again?
Did you want? Try it again.
Ayes 8, no 6.
Bill is reported. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Next up is Senate Bill 1265. And this bill is related to the Department of Veteran Services Virginia War Memorial Division.
So beginning in July 1st, 2019, the names of and homes of record designated of all Virginians killed in action as a result of military operations against terrorism, as a result of terrorist acts, or in any armed conflict after December 6, 1941, shall be placed on the shrine in memory of the grounds of the Virginia War Memorial. New names shall be added to the shrine of memory within 1 year of the date of the confirmed death. No individual who does not meet these criteria shall be enshrined. And what there seems to, Mr. Chairman, the backstory on this is there seems to be some question on whether the shrine was for Virginians killed in action or missing in action or killed while on active duty. This is truly killed in a combat-related incident. There is no financial or staff burden to DVS or the Commonwealth on this. I think it's a great bill, and I'm sure this will be a unanimous bill as well.
Senator DeSteph, several years ago, we had some conversations about the policy. And it turned out that if you were flying to the mission and you were killed, you were included. If you had dropped your bombs and were returning to the base and the plane went down, you were not. Is that dividing line involved in this at all?
I don't believe that's addressed, but I'm happy to.
I think you have a lifeline behind you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, committee. Carrie Ann Alford, Director of Policy and Planning, Virginia Department of Veteran Services. Mr. Chairman, sir, we do have internal regulations that DVS has that I maintain for the agency regarding who exactly gets to go on the wall. I would have to look specifically at that one, but there have been some issues over the years with training accidents, with other active duty service missions that weren't in combat. The issue stemming from when the War Memorial was first created and put into code, the Shrine of Memory was the War Memorial. And with the addition of the Paul and Phyllis Galante Education Center, the code was not updated to reflect the two different parts, and that has caused confusion and some issues with the family. And so we as an agency, especially with the new expansion set to be open on Patriots Day of 2019, we felt this was a good time to update the code to specifically talk about what the Shrine Memory does, which is honor those Virginians who gave their lives in combat.
In other words, Mr. Chairman, I'll get back to you before this hits the floor with a definitive answer.
I'm going to, if there's no objections, I'm going to allow you to just deal with that next Monday. Because that was a very compelling argument that happened, and I made a permanent enemy on that because I wouldn't support somebody.
Happy to get that clarified, Mr. Chairman. If that's not included, I'm happy to have it included because going to combat and from combat, that means if you're flying to do a mission and you're shot down, then that would say you weren't included in that, and frankly, you should be, or killed in the line of duty on the way to perform that mission.
One of those examples was a vehicle that was hit with some kind of explosive. If they had died in that, they were included. If it blew them out of it and they went into the river and drowned, they were not. Now, to me, that's a very arbitrary call.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you 100%. Happy to get that clarified and included.
Since you were not here at the time, I wasn't sure.
No, I wasn't here at the time, but I'm happy to get this clarified.
Mr. Chairman, might I suggest we take this by for the week?
We're going to do that. But Senator Evan, you had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one question so I can figure out before next Monday, if it's not clear today. If someone who's missing in action as a result of the Vietnam War, we presume that they were killed by the enemy. Is that correct or no? That's the problem here. They may not have been, or?
We do have a special monument within the War Memorial. It is within the Galante Center for missing in action in Vietnam.
Thank you.
Also, Mr. Chairman, if we do at some point find anyone as with the remains of the Korean War or with the Vietnam War, and we find out those are Virginians, we do add them to the wall later. We have the ability to do that.